The world of faith, family, and Christian broadcasting has been shaken to its very core. For decades, the name James Dobson has stood as a towering figure in evangelical America, a voice of morality, a defender of families, a counselor to presidents, and above all, a spiritual guide for millions who clung to his words of wisdom. But now, as the great man's final chapter has closed, a haunting revelation has emerged. His daughter, Danae Dobson, has finally broken her silence, and the world cannot believe what she revealed about her father's last word. This isn't just another celebrity goodbye. This isn't just another preacher fading into the twilight of memory. This is James Dobson, the founder of Focus on the Family, the counselor who shaped culture, the man who made Washington tremble and churches rally, speaking his last words with breath weakened by age and frailty. And when those words were finally revealed by Danae, they sent a tidal wave of emotion across every corner of the Christian world. But what exactly did James Dobson say? Why did Danae wait so long to share them? And what do those last words mean for the future of his family, his ministry, and the millions who once hung on every sentence he ever spoke? Today we dive deep into his life, his family, his legacy, his controversial moments, and finally, into the emotional truth of his last words. Brace yourself, because this story will leave you in tears, in shock, and perhaps in awe of a man who lived and died by faith, the man behind the legacy. James Dobson was not just another televangelist or Christian author. He was, for many, the psychologist of America's families. Trained as a clinical psychologist, he broke into the mainstream not with fire and brimstone preaching, but with calm, reasoned, and compassionate advice for parents, couples, and children. His books, such as Dare to Discipline and Bringing Up Boys, became household staples, quoted in Bible studies and parenting groups across the globe. Through his radio broadcast, Focus on the Family, which he founded in 1977, he reached tens of millions worldwide. He spoke to young parents struggling to raise children in a changing world. He counseled broken marriages. He stood firmly against what he saw as the moral decay of modern culture. But Dobson wasn't just a voice in the pulpit or on the airwaves. He was a cultural warrior, often standing at the forefront of America's most divisive debates. Abortion, same-sex marriage, pornography, school prayer, and the very definition of family. Love him or hate him, you couldn't ignore him. Politicians sought his blessing. Presidents invited him to the White House. His influence stretched far beyond the pews of Sunday services. And yet, behind the public figure, behind the polished radio voice, behind the political giant, there was always the man. A husband, a father, a man who wept, who laughed, who worried, who aged. And that man is the one Danae has now chosen to reveal to the world in her most intimate and emotional confession yet. The daughter who knew him best. While millions knew James Dobson as a public figure, Danae Dobson knew him as Dad. Born into the Dobson household, Danae grew up surrounded by the whirlwind of her father's fame. She saw him travel, write, speak, and lead. She saw the applause, the criticism, the controversies, and the victories. But she also saw the private side. The man who read bedtime stories, who prayed with her at night, who worried about her future. Danae, like her father, became a Christian writer and speaker. But unlike him, she never sought the same level of fame. Instead, she lived somewhat in the shadows of his towering reputation. Respected, yes, but never the one in the spotlight. That's why, when James Dobson's health began to decline, it was Danae who was often by his side. Not the political allies, not the TV cameras, not the megachurch pastors who once clamored for his endorsement. No, it was Danae, holding his hand, whispering prayers, and listening to his words when his voice grew frail. And now, after all this time, she has decided to let the world know what her father whispered in those final fleeting breaths. The silence before the storm. In the final months of his life, James Dobson was a shadow of the man the world remembered. The booming voice that once shook airwaves was reduced to a whisper. His sharp mind, which once debated politicians and counseled presidents, became clouded by the fog of illness. Family members described those months as a mix of holy peace and heartbreaking decline. He often drifted between lucidity and silence, between long stretches of sleep and short moments of clarity. But one thing remained constant, his faith. Even when his body weakened, he insisted on prayer. Even when he couldn't walk, he wanted scripture read aloud. Even when visitors came and went, he tried with weak smiles to remind them of God's love. And yet, throughout those final days, there was a sense of anticipation. The family waited. They believed he had something left to say. And they were right. The last words revealed. Finally, as the world braced for the inevitable, it happened. According to Danae, James Dobson's last words were not about politics, not about fame, not about the battles he fought in the cultural arena. They were words of pure, heartbreaking simplicity. Through tears, Danae revealed, my father's last words, spoken in a whisper while I held his hand, were, I just want people to love Jesus. That's all that matters now. Think about that. Not protect the family values, not fight the culture war, not remember my books, not even take care of my ministry. No. His final words were about Jesus, about love, about simplicity, about eternity. And as Danae shared them publicly for the first time, the room where she spoke reportedly fell into utter silence. People wept, others bowed their heads. The revelation was not just about a man's final words, but about a lifetime of ministry distilled into one single fragile sentence. The weight of his final message. Why did these words hit so hard? Because for decades, James Dobson was seen as the general in the Christian culture wars. He was a strategist, a debater, a fighter. To many, he was the man who put focus on the family into the halls of power. But at the end of his life, he revealed something that transcended all of it. His last words stripped away the politics, they stripped away the controversies, they stripped away the power struggles and the debates. They revealed the heart of a man who, when facing eternity, understood what truly mattered. Not the debates, not the fame, not the spotlight, just Jesus, just love. And that, according to Danae, is the truth she wants the world to remember. Why Danae waited. But here's the question that everyone asked. Why did Danae wait? Why not reveal these last words the moment he passed? Why hold them so close for so long? Her answer is as emotional as the words themselves. I wasn't ready, she confessed. I wanted to keep those words close to my heart. They were just for me, for our family, at first. But now, I feel God telling me that the world needs to hear them. That in all the noise of division and anger, my father's final words might bring healing. And indeed, that's exactly what they've done. The internet reacts. When Danae's revelation hit the press, the internet exploded. On social media, hashtags like #JamesDobsonLastWords and #LoveJesus began trending. Clips of Danae's tearful confession went viral. TikTok users shared emotional edits with somber music. Instagram flooded with quotes of his last words in artistic fonts over sunsets and candlelight backgrounds. People who once criticized him admitted to being moved, even though